13. Haing S. Ngor, 1940-1996. Haing Somnang Ngor was a man who survived one of the most brutal regimes in human history, only to fall victim to senseless violence on the streets of Los Angeles. Before he was a celebrated actor, Ngor was a trained gynecologist and obstetrician in Cambodia. His life was irrevocably altered by the rise of the Khmer Rouge in 1975. Under the dictatorship of Pol Pot, intellectuals and professionals were systematically targeted for execution. Ngor survived 4 years of torture, starvation, and forced labor by concealing his medical background and feigning a lack of education. He eventually escaped to Thailand in 1980 and moved to the United States. Despite having no prior acting experience, he was cast as Dith Pran in the 1984 film The Killing Fields. His performance, drawn from his own traumatic survival, earned him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, making him the first Asian actor to win in that category for a debut role. Beyond Hollywood, he dedicated his life to humanitarian aid for Cambodian refugees. On February 25, 1996, the 55-year-old actor arrived at his home in the Chinatown district of Los Angeles. As he exited his vehicle, he was confronted by 3 members of a street gang known as the Oriental Lazy Boys. What transpired was initially suspected to be a politically motivated assassination due to Ngor's activism against the Khmer Rouge. However, the investigation revealed a motive grounded in common criminal greed. The gang members demanded his Rolex watch, which he handed over. They then demanded a gold locket hanging around his neck. The locket contained the only surviving photograph of his late wife, Chiang Mai-huoi, who had died during the Cambodian genocide. Ngor refused to give up the locket. In the ensuing struggle, he was shot and killed in the driveway of his carport. Haing S. Ngor is buried at Rose Hills Memorial Park in Whittier, California. His grave is located in the singular Garden of Comfort section. The flat bronze marker is inscribed with his name in both English and Khmer. It serves as a quiet final resting place for a man who survived the killing fields of his homeland, only to be taken by the violence of his adopted city. The 3 gang members responsible were eventually captured, convicted, and sentenced to lengthy prison terms, though they maintained the robbery was a random act rather than a targeted hit on the actor specifically. 12. Pop Smoke, 1999, 20-20. Bashar Baraka Jackson, known professionally as Pop Smoke, was a rapidly rising figure in the music industry who helped popularize the Brooklyn drill sound globally. In a career that lasted barely 2 years, he reshaped the sonic landscape of hip-hop with his deep, gravelly voice and aggressive beats. His breakout single, Welcome to the Party, released in 2019, became an anthem of the summer, and his second mixtape, Meet the Woo 2, debuted in the top 10 of the Billboard 200 just days before his death. He was on the verge of superstardom, bridging the gap between New York gritty street rap and international mainstream appeal. In February of 2020, Pop Smoke was staying at a rented luxury home in the Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles. The tragedy unfolded after a series of social media posts inadvertently revealed the address of the rental property. On the night of February 19th, a group of intruders, later identified as members of a Los Angeles street gang, broke into the home. The invasion was targeted. The assailants had seen the rapper's posts displaying luxury items and cash. They entered the bedroom where Pop Smoke was staying. During the confrontation, the rapper was pistol-whipped and shot multiple times in the torso. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but was pronounced dead at the age of 20. The investigation led to the arrest of 5 individuals, including 2 juveniles who had targeted him specifically for robbery. Pop Smoke was flown back to New York and buried at the historic Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. His grave is located in a mausoleum on the cemetery grounds. Tragically, even in death, he remained a target. In September of 2021, vandals broke into the mausoleum crypt. They smashed the marble plaque bearing his birth name, Bashar Baraka Jackson, and attempted to drag the casket out of the wall, causing significant damage to the site. The motive for the desecration was never fully established, but it necessitated repairs and increased security around the final resting place of the young artist. 11. Rebecca Schaeffer, 1967-1989. Rebecca Schaeffer was a young actress with a promising career and a girl-next-door charm that endeared her to American audiences. She began her career as a model before moving into acting, landing her breakthrough role as Patty Russell in the sitcom My Sister Sam in 1986. She starred alongside Pam Dawber and became a teen idol, featured regularly on the covers of magazines like 17. Schaeffer was transitioning into more serious film roles and was arguably just beginning to reach her potential as a dramatic actress when her life was cut short in a crime that would permanently change American privacy laws. For 3 years, Schaeffer had been unknowingly stalked by a fan named Robert John Bardo. Bardo had become obsessed with her after seeing her on television. His obsession turned violent when he saw a scene in the film Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills, in which Schaeffer appeared in bed with an actor. Enraged and viewing this as a loss of her innocence, Bardo decided to confront her. He hired a private investigator to obtain her home address, a process that was legal and easily done through the Department of Motor Vehicles records at the time. On July 18, 1989, Bardo traveled to her apartment building in the West Hollywood district of Los Angeles. When Schaeffer answered her door, Bardo shot her in the chest at point-blank range. She died shortly after at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. She was only 21 years old. Rebecca Schaeffer was buried at Ahavai Shalom Cemetery in Portland, Oregon, her hometown. Her grave is a simple, flat granite marker set flush with the grass, inscribed with the words, "A Shining Star." Her death had a profound legacy. It led directly to the passage of the Driver's Privacy Protection Act in 1994, which restricts the disclosure of personal information from DMV records. Her murder remains one of the most high-profile cases of celebrity stalking in history, highlighting the dangers public figures face from fixated individuals. 10 Dimebag Darrell, 1966-2004. Darrell Lance Abbott, best known as Dimebag Darrell, was a virtuoso guitarist and a founding member of the heavy metal bands Pantera and Damageplan. Widely considered one of the greatest metal guitarists of all time, he was known for his powerful grooves, lightning-fast solos, and a distinctive tone that defined the groove metal genre in the 1990s. With Pantera, he achieved massive success with albums like Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display of Power. After Pantera disbanded due to internal conflicts, Darrell formed Damageplan with his brother, Vinnie Paul. He was beloved in the metal community not just for his talent, but for his approachable, party-loving personality. On the night of December 8, 2004, exactly 24 years after the murder of John Lennon, Damageplan was performing at the Alrosa Villa nightclub in Columbus, Ohio. Minutes into their set, a man named Nathan Gale climbed onto the stage. Gale was a former Marine and a paranoid schizophrenic who believed that the members of Pantera were stealing his thoughts and that they were responsible for the band's breakup. Without warning, he drew a 9mm Beretta handgun and shot Darrell multiple times in the head, killing him instantly. The gunman continued shooting, killing 3 others, a fan, a club employee, and the band's head of security, before being shot and killed by a police officer who arrived on the scene. The murder was a shocking, targeted attack carried out in front of a crowd of fans. Dimebag Darrell was buried at Moore Memorial Gardens in Arlington, Texas. His burial is the stuff of rock and roll legend. He was laid to rest in a Kiss casket, a custom coffin featuring the logos and faces of the band Kiss, which had been donated by Gene Simmons upon learning of Darrell's love for the band. Furthermore, Eddie Van Halen, whom Darrell idolized, donated his original black and yellow striped Bumblebee guitar, the actual instrument featured on the Van Halen 2 album, to be buried in the casket with him. His grave is a place of pilgrimage for metal fans, marked by an elaborate headstone featuring an etching of his likeness and his guitar. 9. Maurizio Gucci, 1948-1995. Maurizio Gucci was the grandson of Guccio Gucci, the founder of the world-famous luxury fashion house. Maurizio inherited a 50% stake in the company after his father's death and became the chairman of the Gucci Group. His tenure was marked by high-stakes corporate battles with his relatives and an attempt to restore the brand's exclusivity after years of over-licensing. While he was eventually forced to sell his shares to an investment group in 1993, ending the family's control over the empire, he remained a wealthy and prominent figure in Italian high society. His death was orchestrated by the person once closest to him, his ex-wife, Patrizia Reggiani. The couple's marriage had disintegrated, and Reggiani was reportedly furious about the divorce settlement, her loss of status, and Maurizio's plans to marry his new partner. On the morning of March 27, 1995, Maurizio walked up the steps to his private office on Via Palestro in Milan. A hitman, hired by Reggiani through a middleman, stepped out of a parked Renault and fired 4 shots. 3 struck Maurizio in the back and buttocks, and a final fatal shot was delivered to his temple. The brazen daylight assassination shocked Italy. Reggiani was eventually arrested and convicted for arranging the murder, earning her the nickname the Black Widow in the Italian press. Maurizio Gucci is not buried in Milan where he died. He was laid to rest in St. Moritz, Switzerland, a luxury alpine resort town where the Gucci family had long maintained a residence and deep social ties. His grave is located within the family's private chapel site in the erratic mountain terrain. The location reflects the lifestyle he lived, exclusive, wealthy, and removed from the public eye. The murder of Maurizio Gucci stands as one of the most scandalous chapters in the history of the fashion industry, a story of dynastic collapse and personal vengeance. 8. Christina Grimmie, 1994-2016. Christina Grimmie was a shining example of the modern music star, rising to fame through the digital age. She began posting videos of herself covering hit songs on YouTube as a teenager, amassing millions of subscribers and becoming one of the platform's first true music sensations. Her powerful voice and warm personality led her to compete on the 6th season of the reality television show The Voice in 2014, where she finished in 3rd place. She released a studio album and continued to tour, building a dedicated fan base known as Team Grimmie. She was known for her kindness and her close connection with her fans. On June 10, 2016, Christina performed a concert at the Plaza Live in Orlando, Florida. After the show ended, she stayed behind to sign autographs and meet fans at a merchandise table. A 27-year-old man named Kevin Loibl, who had traveled from St. Petersburg, Florida, approached her. Loibl had developed an unhealthy, delusional obsession with the singer, undergoing cosmetic surgeries and changing his lifestyle to make himself worthy of her, despite never having met her. When he reached the front of the line, Christina opened her arms to give him a hug, assuming he was a fan. Loibl drew a handgun and shot her. Christina's brother, Marcus, immediately tackled the gunman, a heroic act that likely prevented further casualties. During the struggle, the gunman shot and killed himself. Christina was rushed to the hospital but died from her wounds. Christina Grimmie was buried in a private ceremony at Berlin Cemetery in Berlin, New Jersey, near her hometown of Marlton. To protect the privacy of the grieving family, the exact location of the grave was kept relatively quiet initially, but it has since become a place for fans to pay respects. Her headstone is heart-shaped and features a laser-etched portrait of the singer, along with lyrics from her song, "I have fallen in love with the consummation of music and my husband." The husband reference is spiritual, reflecting her devout Christian faith. 7. XXXTentacion, 1998-2018. José Dwayne Ricardo Onfroy, known globally as XXXTentacion, was one of the most polarizing and influential figures in the SoundCloud rap era. His music was a raw, genre-bending mix of hip-hop, rock, R&B, and emo, often dealing with themes of depression and alienation. Despite a career plagued by legal controversies and allegations of domestic violence, he built a massive cult-like following. His album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 in 2018, cementing his status as a major mainstream artist. He was seen by many as a troubled genius who was attempting to turn his life around in the months leading up to his death. On June 18, 2018, the 20-year-old rapper visited Riva Motorsports in Deerfield Beach, Florida, to look at motorcycles. As he attempted to leave the dealership in his BMW i8, an SUV blocked his path. 2 armed men jumped out and approached his vehicle. While the primary motive was robbery, the assailants stole a Louis Vuitton bag containing $50,000 in cash. The attack was targeted in the sense that the group had spotted him entering the dealership and lay in wait. During the struggle, XXXTentacion was shot multiple times in the neck. The suspects fled the scene, leaving him in critical condition. He was pronounced dead at the local hospital. 4 men were later indicted and convicted in connection with the murder. XXXXTentacion was laid to rest in a mausoleum at the Gardens of Boca Raton in Florida. His tomb is a large gray stone structure with his stage name, XXXTentacion, prominent across the top. The architecture is neoclassical, featuring columns and a gate. It is a highly visited site, often surrounded by flowers and tributes left by his young fan base. The grave serves as a monument to a volatile but undeniable talent whose life ended violently just as he was reaching the peak of his fame. 6. Gianni Versace, 1946-1997. Gianni Versace was a titan of the fashion world, a designer who brought rock and roll energy, sexuality, and vibrant color to high fashion. He founded the Versace brand in 1978 and quickly became known for his daring designs, often using materials like metal mesh and bonded leather. He dressed the most famous women in the world, from Princess Diana to Madonna, and is credited with creating the supermodel phenomenon of the 1990s. He lived openly and lavishly, with a portfolio of homes that included a stunning mansion in South Beach, Miami, known as Casa Casuarina. On the morning of July 15, 1997, Versace followed his usual routine. He walked to a nearby cafe to buy magazines and returned to his Ocean Drive mansion. As he unlocked the wrought iron gates of his home, Andrew Cunanan, a 27-year-old spree killer who was already on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for murdering 4 other men across the country, walked up behind him. Cunanan shot the designer twice in the back of the head. Versace died instantly on the steps of his own home. Cunanan fled and committed suicide on a houseboat 8 days later as police closed in. The motive remains a subject of debate. Cunanan was a pathological liar who resented the wealthy and famous, and killing Versace was the culmination of a cross-country killing spree. Following a public memorial service in Milan attended by dignitaries and celebrities, Gianni Versace was cremated. His ashes were not kept in the United States, but were returned to Italy. He is buried in the family vault at the cemetery of Moltrasio, a small town overlooking Lake Como, near the Villa Fontanelle, which Versace owned. The site is quiet and traditional, a stark contrast to the flashy, maximalist aesthetic that defined his life and career. 5. Selena Quintanilla, 1971-1995. Known simply as Selena, she was the queen of Tejano music, a genre she helped modernize and popularize across the United States and Mexico. With hits like Como la Flor and Bidi Bidi Bom Bom, she became a cultural icon. She was on the brink of a massive crossover into the English-language pop market with her album, Dreaming of You. Selena was more than just a singer. She was a fashion designer and a role model for millions of Latinas. Her success was family-driven, with her father managing her career and her brother producing her music. Her murderer was not a stranger, but a trusted associate. Yolanda Saldivar was the president of Selena's fan club and the manager of her boutiques. In early 1995, the Quintanilla family discovered that Saldivar had been embezzling money from the fan club and the stores. On March 31, 1995, Selena agreed to meet Saldivar at a Days Inn motel in Corpus Christi, Texas, to retrieve financial records. During an argument in the motel room as Selena turned to leave, Saldivar shot her once in the back. The bullet severed an artery. Selena managed to run to the lobby to name her assailant before collapsing. She died at the hospital shortly after due to blood loss. She was 23 years old. Selena is buried at Seaside Memorial Park in Corpus Christi, Texas. Her grave is one of the most visited celebrity burial sites in Texas. It is marked by a black granite headstone featuring a relief portrait of the singer and the inscription, "He will actually swallow up death forever." The site is often adorned with white roses, her favorite flower. A separate memorial, a life-size bronze statue called Mirador de la Flor, stands on the Corpus Christi seawall, but the grave itself remains the primary point of connection for her enduring fan base. 4. Sharon Tate, 1943-1969. Sharon Tate was a rising Hollywood actress and a symbol of the swinging 60s. With her stunning beauty and gentle demeanor, she had appeared in films like Valley of the Dolls and The Fearless Vampire Killers. She was married to director Roman Polanski and, in the summer of 1969, was 8.5 months pregnant with their first child. She was living at 150 Cielo Drive in Los Angeles, a home that would soon become infamous. On the night of August 9, 1969, Tate was at home with 3 friends while Polanski was away in Europe. Members of the Manson family, a cult led by Charles Manson, broke into the property. The attackers, acting on Manson's instructions to create chaos and incite a race war he called Helter Skelter, targeted the house because it had previously been rented by a music producer who had rejected Manson. Tate and her friends were subjected to a brutal, prolonged attack. Despite pleading for the life of her unborn child, Tate was stabbed 16 times. All 4 people in the house, plus a teenager who had been driving by, were killed. The savagery of the crime effectively ended the era of peace and love in American culture. Sharon Tate is buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California. She was interred with her unborn son, who was named Paul Richard Polanski posthumously. Her grave is located in the St. Anne section near the grotto. The marker is a simple stone bearing her name and the name of her child. For decades, it has been a destination for those mourning the loss of a woman who represented the innocence of a generation, destroyed by a cult that represented its darkest underbelly. 3. The Notorious B.I.G., 1972-1997. Christopher Wallace, known as the Notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls, was the central figure of East Coast hip-hop in the mid-90s. With his storyteller lyrics, effortless flow, and commanding presence, he released the critically acclaimed album Ready to Die in 1994. He became entangled in the coastal rap rivalry between the East Coast, Bad Boy Records, and the West Coast, Death Row Records. This feud escalated personal tensions and led to a climate of hostility in the music world. On March 9, 1997, 6 months after the murder of his rival Tupac Shakur, Biggie was in Los Angeles attending a party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. As he left the event, he was sitting in the passenger seat of a Chevrolet Suburban. When the vehicle stopped at a red light, a dark-colored Chevrolet Impala pulled up alongside it. An unidentified African-American man in a blue suit rolled down the window and fired 4 shots into the Suburban, all of them striking Wallace. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center but was pronounced dead shortly after. The murder, executed in a professional manner, has never been officially solved, though theories abound regarding gang involvement and connections to the death row rivalry. The Notorious B.I.G. was cremated. There is no traditional grave for the rapper. His funeral was held at the Frank E. Campbell Funeral Chapel in Manhattan, attended by thousands who lined the streets of Brooklyn to watch the hearse pass. His ashes were given to his family. While there is no headstone to visit, his legacy is memorialized throughout Brooklyn, with murals and street namings, Christopher Notorious B.I.G. Wallace Way, serving as the physical markers of his life and death in the borough he famously represented. 2. Tupac Shakur, 1971-1996. Tupac Amaru Shakur was more than a rapper. He was a poet, actor, and revolutionary voice for the disenfranchised. As the face of West Coast hip-hop and Death Row Records, he released massive hits like California Love and Dear Mama. His music addressed social issues, racism, and life in the ghetto, while his public persona was often embroiled in legal trouble and the escalating East-West rap war. He was a figure of immense charisma and volatility. On September 7, 1996, Tupac attended the Mike Tyson vs. Bruce Seldon boxing match at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. After the fight, he was riding in the passenger seat of a BMW, driven by Death Row CEO Suge Knight. As they waited at a red light at the intersection of Flamingo Road and Koval Lane, a white Cadillac pulled up to the right side of their vehicle. An occupant of the Cadillac fired a volley of gunshots, hitting Tupac 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. He fought for his life in the hospital for 6 days, eventually succumbing to his wounds on September 13th. The prime suspect, Orlando Anderson, a member of the Southside Compton Crips who had been in a brawl with Tupac earlier that evening, was killed in an unrelated gang shooting 2 years later. No one was ever convicted for Tupac's murder, though an arrest was finally made in 2023 involving a gang leader who allegedly orchestrated the hit. Like his rival Biggie, Tupac Shakur has no physical grave. He was cremated the day after his death. His ashes were given to his mother, Afeni Shakur. According to members of his group, the Outlaws, some of his ashes were mixed with marijuana and smoked by his friends in a ritual tribute, though this claim is controversial. Some of his remains were scattered in Los Angeles, and others are kept by the family. The site of the shooting in Las Vegas serves as a grim landmark for fans, but the absence of a grave adds to the mystique and the conspiracy theories that have surrounded his death for decades. Born John Lennon, 1940–1980. John Lennon remains one of the most culturally significant figures of the 20th century. As a founder of the Beatles, he changed the course of music history. After the band's breakup, his solo career was defined by calls for peace and political activism, with anthems like Imagine. By 1980, Lennon had just returned to the public eye after a 5-year hiatus to raise his son, Sean. He had released the album Double Fantasy with his wife, Yoko Ono, and was optimistic about the future. On December 8, 1980, Lennon spent the day working in a recording studio. As he returned to his home at the Dakota apartment building in New York City around 10:50 p.m., a man named Mark David Chapman was waiting for him in the archway entrance. Chapman, a 25-year-old former security guard from Hawaii, had met Lennon earlier that evening and even gotten an autograph on a copy of Double Fantasy. Driven by a delusional desire for notoriety and a warped interpretation of the novel The Catcher in the Rye, Chapman fired 5 hollow-point bullets from a .38 special revolver at Lennon's back. 4 shots connected. Lennon stumbled into the building and collapsed. He was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital in a police cruiser, but was pronounced dead on arrival. The murder of the world's most famous advocate for peace sent a shockwave around the globe that is still felt today. John Lennon was cremated at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. There was no funeral. His ashes were scattered by Yoko Ono in Central Park, directly across the street from the Dakota. In 1985, that area of the park was landscaped and officially dedicated as the Strawberry Fields Memorial. The centerpiece is a black and white mosaic floor inscribed with the single word, Imagine. It is not a grave in the traditional sense, but it functions as the spiritual center for Lennon's memory. Every year, on the anniversary of his birth and death, thousands of fans gather there to sing his songs and leave flowers, marking the spot where a criminal act tried to silence a voice but only succeeded in making it immortal.